Hi Team DPS, I'm Natalie Brigham. We're about to sit down with an Emmy lead producer, Beto Gaytan, and talk about his career and his journey for success. Thank you also to DPS America for providing our furniture today. You can actually find this set in our high schools, which is pretty cool. Without that, let's get the show started and invite our first guest on. Come on in, Beto.
Right. This is really cool, Natalie. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Welcome to the first episode of DPS Stories. Denver Public Schools is the largest school district in Colorado with over 200 schools, 90,000 students, and 10,000 employees. This show is dedicated to the members of Team DPS that strive to make DPS a better and brighter place for our students. We sit down with real DPS employees, discover their story of who they are, how they got here, and how they're making a difference at DPS. To join us on our pilot episode, we have Roberto Beto Gaytan, and an Emmy Award-winning lead producer on the DPS Communications team. Beto joined Team DPS in 2013 and has been the host of the EDUCA program in Spanish since 2015. And during the 2023-24 school year, he earned an Emmy for the DPS Communications team with a video highlighting Hispanic Heritage Month for Bryant Webster Mariachi Band. Welcome to the show, Beto.
Thank you, Natalie.
I would love to kind of set the scene and talk about your upbringing. You grew up in Chihuahua, Mexico?
Yes.
And eventually moved to Denver.
Absolutely.
What do you remember about growing up in Chihuahua, Mexico?
Hi. You're touching a nerve. I remember I have a lot of good memories about Chihuahua. You know, growing up as a kid, I was raised by my grandmother, and that was the fun part about Chihuahua. It wasn't so much fun growing up as a adolescent, you know, because some family issues there. My parents got divorced, and so all of a sudden, you know, I had to be in charge of making sure that I was providing for my younger brothers, right? And so that made it challenging. And so that's that's actually two memories about Chihuahua, but I miss Chihuahua a lot. You know, Chihuahua is the biggest state in Mexico, and it's got a huge desert. And so every time I go to the desert, man, I feel like I'm in Chihuahua.
Yeah. Sounds like you had to grow up pretty quickly.
I did.
When did you arrive in Denver, and what did that journey look like?
Well, so I arrived in Denver in 1979. I was 17 years old, and I didn't know what I was going to run into. So it was sort of easy for me to cross the border, you know, because back in the day they were not as strict, you know, to cross the border. So I ended up on this side. Fortunately for me, I don't have a story like a lot of my friends that are immigrants that cross the desert to get here and all that. Yeah. I was blessed from that aspect. I know that we'll have a purpose in life, and somehow I feel that it had to be here in Denver, so everything worked out really good. I got here by plane.
Nice.
So it was funny because I was on that airplane, and there was this nice girl about my age, and she was talking to me in English. She was like, "Oh, look at this, whatever," and I was like, "Oh yeah."
The nod and smile.
It's funny.
Do you remember what your first impression of Denver was when you arrived?
Yeah, I was actually pretty scared. Every time I go to any airport, it kind of brings back a memory, because my uncle was supposed to pick me up at the gate at the old Stapleton Airport.
Okay.
And I remember I didn't have a dime on me. I just had what I was wearing, right? And so I didn't see anybody. And then all of a sudden I said, "Where's my family? What do I see? Nobody speaks Spanish." And my heart was going like...
That's really nerve-wracking.
Yeah, it is. And so I started walking down the gates, you know, through the gates. And all of a sudden, you know, I get to the outside, and I'm just looking at a lot of cars and people, and I hear a voice saying in Spanish, "Ahí está, míralo, there he is." And then I freaked out because I thought, could that be INS? Or oh no, that's my uncle. So that was a happy moment.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Do you find that there's any similarities between Chihuahua and Denver?
Yes, I do. You know, a lot of the names are in Spanish here in Denver.
Yeah.
You know, so that was good for me. There's a lot of people from Chihuahua, you know, and I would say that the majority of people that live in Denver that are Mexican immigrants, they're either from Chihuahua or Zacatecas and perhaps Durango. Because if you look at the map, we tend to go straight up. If you go to California, you'll see a lot of people from Sinaloa, Michoacan,
Yeah.
If you go to, say, Texas, East Texas, you see a lot of people from Tamaulipas. They go all the way up to Chicago,
Yeah.
So,
How have you made Denver home in these last few years?
it's funny you mentioned that because part of the purpose of me coming to Denver was when I was a teenager, growing up in Chihuahua, I was working at a body shop, where they repair cars and paint them and all that. And so I learned how to do that when I was very young. But I was always working for somebody else. And the people that worked there were not like the best company, right? There was just a lot of older people drinking, doing crazy things. And I was not into that.
Yeah.
So, one day my uncle called me up and he goes like, okay, are you having a hard time in Chihuahua? I said, yeah, I can't keep up with, providing for my brothers and all that. And he's like, I'll bring you to Denver. So the purpose of coming to Denver was so I could get my tools, buy some tools, and then go back and start my own business, right?
Yeah.
So it turns out that 47 years later, I haven't bought the first hammer yet.
I was going to say your career took a little bit of a turn.
It did, because Denver is a magical city, not because of the Broncos, but because of the Broncos.
Yeah, shout out Broncos. So you had a successful career as a DJ. What drew you to that profession and how did you get started?
Remember when I mentioned that, we'll have a purpose in life?
Mm-hmm.
I remember that we didn't have, my wife and I didn't have our citizenship. We were undocumented, right?
Yeah.
And so in the late 80s, President Ronald Reagan made a law, the Simpson-Macaulay law, and provided amnesty for a lot of us that got here before 1980 or something like that. So I did qualify for that, and that's what got me, to become a permanent resident and then eventually a U.S. citizen. But to answer your question, during the program, we were required to study English as a second language for no less than 40 hours. So
Wow.
if you study 40
Full-time
hours, yeah, well, 40 hours just as a requirement, right?
Yeah.
Not every week, but just 40
Oh, I
hours.
see, I see.
Okay. And so I went to this rec center in Swansea.
Yeah.
And so I'd knock on the door and say, hey, I'm so-and-so. I'm here to study my 40 hours of English as a second language. And, the guy interviewed me, which happens to be a teacher over at EGC. He said, let me do a test. Okay, so they tested me. It turns out that my English was fairly advanced, and so they put me to work.
Yeah.
He was like, you get to work here. And so time went on, and they were running out of students. Like people didn't show up, or people got their hours and they just didn't come back or whatever. So he said, how do we go about recruiting some people?
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, well, the radio, I think the radio might work.
Yeah.
So I happen to know this guy that I listen to, and there's going to be an event at Our Lady of Guadalupe Church. It was during the summer. And he said, let me approach him. He goes like, yeah, go for it. So I approached a good friend of mine now, Rodolfo. Shout out to Rodolfo Jose Cardenas. And I asked him, I said, are you the guy from the radio? She goes, well, yeah, because he has this great voice.
Yeah.
It's like, how can I help you? And I was like, hey, well, get this. I'm under the amnesty. I'm working under the amnesty program, and so we need to recruit students to study English as a second language, blah, blah, blah. And he was an immigrant himself, but not through the amnesty. And he was like, all the way, Beto, all the way, whatever you need. So come to the radio station. I'll do an interview, and we'll just see if we get some results. Sure enough, that was the first time I went to a radio station, and he interviewed me, and I said, I know we need people to study English as a second language, blah, blah, blah. This is the address and all that. So I gave out the information, and there was that. So we got good results. Then as time went on, another friend of mine, a musician, his name Beto Terrazas, which recently passed away, a very popular singer, had his own show. And so there was this new radio station that was getting started.
Yeah.
And so Beto invited me to go on the air and said, hey, I'm kind of shy, whatever. It's like, oh, come on, Tocayo, let's talk about something, whatever. So anyway, the program director heard me on the radio, and he goes like, "Hey, I just heard that you talked about this, and that." And he goes, "Hey, let me invite you to come over to an interview with some immigration officers." And I was like,
Yeah. Heart racing.
immigration officers, like, okay. And so anyway, he got me that interview. By that time, Scott, my friend Scott, had already requested that I got my GED, and I had recently gotten it. Believe it or not, the ceremony was over at East High School.
It's funny how this is all connected.
It's all connecting, right? So it's starting to make sense. And so anyway, I got my GED, and I told my friend Nano Perez, which is the guy that gave me the real opportunity in radio, and said, "Hey, I want to be a sound engineer. I want to be behind the scenes. I want to, I love music and all that." He goes like, "We'll train you." And I said, "No." I said, "Do you know about a school that I can?" He goes, "Dude, don't waste your money. School is expensive in this country." So I didn't know any better, right?
Yeah.
And so I said, "All right." So he trained me. Before you knew it, I was doing 15 minutes on air on Saturdays and Sundays. I was like presented to songs, and that was like the show, right?
Yeah.
And so after that, I became more involved, and everyone else I was there, they were leaving, and I stayed. Long story short, I ended up being an on-air announcer, disc jockey, producer, producing my radio spots, selling advertisement. Program director, and that was the beginning of my radio career in 1989.
Yeah. I want to go back to that first interview that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know in that moment that like, did you feel a spark of like, I should be doing this, or were you super nervous? What was your mindset going into that?
I got to tell you something. The answer is no, and I'll tell you why. Through my life, I've been the type of person, I've been so blessed that everything that I've done in life, I never asked for it. It was always somebody seeing something in me that offered me the next opportunity.
Yeah.
And so I didn't, to be honest with you. But when I had the opportunity to use one of these things and amplify my voice, I always made sure that I would stay positive, that I would always respect people, and that I would always promote education.
Yeah.
Because academic education is the one thing that I was lacking in my life to feel whole. I knew that if I didn't have that title hanging on my wall, that there was something lacking, and I still do feel the same way. But things turned out in a way that I was able to be a good community member, someone that was reachable, someone that always opened the door to the next generation.
Yeah.
And not that I'm opening this door to you, but guess what?
I'm here. You're in the interviewee seat.
You're very talented. Now it's
Thank
the other
you.
way around, and I love it.
Well, I need to do you justice, so I've got my questions here, and I'm really excited for it. Something that I would love to know, while you were getting started, were there any particular challenges that you faced on your radio days?
Yes, there was. This one's one that I'm not proud of, but I think it's part of my story. And so between the time I had the responsibility to provide for my brothers and the environment where I ended up working, I started drinking when I was too young. I'm ashamed to say it, but I think it's only fair that I say it. I became an alcoholic, and that was a challenge. But I knew that because of the love that my wife always had for me, and the patience and the understanding, that I had to change my pathway. And as soon as I did that, every single door of opportunities opened up. And to this day, it's been, since 1989, 87, that I don't know what it's like to be intoxicated.
Yeah. Well, I'm proud of you for making that choice, not only for yourself, but all the people that have been in your corner. That sounds like, I'll ask you about the wild times of being a radio host, but also I can imagine that lifestyle and perhaps alcohol is quite intertwined.
It is. It is. But, lucky for me, I got the opportunity when I was already a clean person, but that opportunity allowed me the opportunity, per se,
Yeah.
excuse the expression, to know better, because I would see a lot of my friends, just go down the drain because of their habits,
Yeah.
and so I was always an advocate to say, don't go there, Don't
Yeah.
go there. I'm not one to judge. I don't like judging,
Yeah.
I don't like guilt trips. When you drink and you don't have a good time, you're always feeling guilt, and that's not a good feeling. So I always said, hey, let's stay positive.
Yeah.
Let's do this. Stay away from that.
Well, staying away from that, I want to talk about some of the interactions that you've had with some people on air. What has been your favorite interview or like celebrity musician interaction that you've had on the radio?
Okay, so I think all of them. I don't think I want to overestimate or underestimate anybody, right? But I can tell you, I made trips to Puerto Rico, with Marco Antonio Solis, to be at the recording of his live album, in
so
Puerto
cool.
Rico, and he invited me personally. He was a guy that every time he saw me anywhere, he would acknowledge me and hug me and all that. And so that was really cool. We coincided in so many different markets, obviously in Denver. So it happens that the radio station that I was programming was the radio station that was bringing the main events, so Latino dances here at what's now the Fillmore. Used to be the Mammoth Event Center, so that's where all the Spanish scene was happening, right?
Yeah.
So I was the MC there. I was the program director. So it was like a full circle situation. But I want to say that one of the artists that kind of stands out because they're so big worldwide is Mana. I had a chance to spend a whole week with them here in Denver. They're so down to earth. Pretty cool guys. The singer, he asked me if I could bring the band to Breckenridge. So we took a trip to Breckenridge. On the way there, we stopped to get coffee, to eat, and all that. And you wouldn't believe if I said that he was like willing to fix coffee for me, So I'm telling you, it's just been an amazing journey, an amazing story for me. One that I didn't ask for, one that it just happened, and I kind of saw the value of it, and I said, hey, why not?
Yeah. Is there, or has there been a moment in your career where you've thought to yourself like, wow, I've made it?
No, not really. When you come from a background like mine,
Mm-hmm.
where it's very important to know what your weaknesses are and your strengths are,
Mm-hmm.
you cannot afford to be sort of arrogant and say, ooh, I made it, I'm it, I think it's a better feeling when someone else says, like, you're all this, and I just leave it at that.
Yeah.
I don't bring it with me, It's funny because a lot of times people say, well, you sound different on the radio, You sound different, you just don't have the same level of energy. I would like, of course, I'm not going to go around saying, well, hello there, what's your name? I'm Beto. I don't do that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But, people tend to appreciate that because when you are down to earth and you are approachable, people listen to the radio or see you on TV or now on social media, and they think, oh, wow, he's an expert or he knows this and all that,
Yeah.
I always tell people when you're on the radio and you say, hey, today's forecast, it's going to be cloudy and it's going to rain and it's going to snow, so be prepared. People say, hey, a guy on the radio say that it's going to rain, so let's bring the raincoat or let's bring
you
our
become
jackets.
the authority
or
on it.
Right. So that's how you create that credibility, right?
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate that. So it's, to me, this little thing called a microphone, it deserves a lot of respect. And I've always used a microphone to amplify something positive,
Absolutely. And I would love to talk more about that. So how did you kind of shift from being a DJ to working for Denver Public Schools? Like, what was that transition of radio to education like?
That's a really good question. And I always tell people, I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, anybody can answer the request line, be the coolest guy because, they ask for a song and you play it, and all you got to do is just program the song and say, and here's your song, right? And everybody loves you for that, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes down to education, it's like giving justice to the community, to the DPS community in my case. And so that really made me feel that it was time to make a change.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes I wanted to get away from radio and do different things because, radio is not easy. Broadcast is not easy, and it's not getting easier either. It's pretty challenging. And oftentimes I felt like giving up. But somehow I ended up being sucked back into it. And when Sal Carrera and Julieta Quiñones approached me to help them with the show, I was their consultant because they were good community people, and Sal was a broadcast person, but on a different aspect. Julieta was more of a, here we are for you,
Yeah.
And so by bringing me on board, it would help them. The purpose was for me to help them develop his talents, and I think I did a pretty good job because Julieta developed like nobody was. Shout out, Julieta. We love you. So anyway, and that was the transition. So I really enjoyed that part. And then they asked me to be the host right away. And I said, no, wait a minute. Let me get my feet wet. Let me understand more about the system and all that. Because when you have a mic, it's not about being on the mic because I'm Beto Gaytan, and you have to really be careful, especially when it comes down to messaging and, what's appropriate, what's not,
Yeah.
Oftentimes I made mistakes where, I laughed at something because I come from the entertainment side of broadcast, right? And so to me, it's about having fun. It's a microphone. Let's have fun. Being respectful.
Yeah.
And sometimes you cross the line. So I did that a couple of times, and thanks to Julieta, he was like, "Hey, Beto."
We'll fix that. I would love to know. You've talked a lot about other people have opened up opportunities for you, and now working at DPS on the communications team, I feel like you have the really interesting job of being able to open up doors for students and kind of show them this world where you have a microphone in front of you, you have a camera, like these are the things you can do with it. How have you how has your experience being on radio and working on this team changed how you interact with students?
Okay, well, there is one word in my mind and my heart and my vocabulary called gratitude. Okay? So everything that I do, everything that I know, everything that I learn, I'm like an open book. I want to share that with the world.
Yeah.
And I don't know if sometimes I could be overwhelming, sometimes, but I have that necessity, right? Because someone else did that for me. And so every time I get a chance to interview a student, I'm like the happiest person in the world. It's like, this is like the purpose, like giving their students a voice, And so we used to have different segments on EDUCA where, we would go, because it was just radio, right? So it was a little easier to interact with the student with the recorder, and then get some sound bites. And now it's different, it takes a lot more coordination because we got cameras and all that, and we have, media releases and all that. But my hope is that we still do that and that we are more inclusive also with the Hispanic, Spanish speaker community and other communities, because there was a time when EDUCA had 7 different languages on the air.
Incredible, yeah.
Yep.
So you are helping out, you lead the EDUCA podcast in Spanish, and then you also support with Black Voices in Color student-led podcast. What's your favorite part about producing these shows? What are some of your favorite memories associated with them?
Well, first of all, I don't think I lead anything. I think we are a team and we all contribute. So I see myself as a contributor.
Okay.
It's real easy to get hung up into the leadership kind of thing, which is fine, and I respect. But I also feel that we'll contribute because we don't get anywhere by ourselves. There's always someone either pushing us, giving us that opportunity that I talk about. And oftentimes, a good word of advice is what works. So I feel that I contribute, and I'm open-minded to whoever wants to learn what I've learned. Sometimes it's relevant because sometimes things change that are not so relevant anymore, and so that's really my attitude. So I got to tell you, before I forget, which I don't think I'll ever forget, I'm grateful to say that I work for a team in communications, because I came back to communications. That's another story. We were with multicultural outreach. First communications, then multicultural outreach, and then came back. And there was certain uncertainty, when there was a reorg in Denver Public Schools. But again, I'm this blessed person, so lucky to have landed with a group of people that see value in the things that I do. I don't think anybody treats me any different. I just feel that it's a blessing to be part of this communications team. And then I get to meet people like you that are like doing these great things. And I'm like, wow, Javier and Don.
I mean, it's
Mindy.
amazing because we're all a part of this team, and I can sit here and say the same things about you where I'm like, Beto's had such an amazing career. He's an Emmy winner. But at the same time, I want to learn from you as much as you want to learn from me and all of our other peers. And I think that's an amazing dynamic for our team.
Absolutely. The one thing about learning is, and especially for people like myself, is like you cannot live from the past. The past is something that helps you be who you want to be next, or it helps you be who you are now.
Yeah.
Right? But I think about what I've done in radio as it was really cool, but that was then. This is now. This is my new reality.
Yeah.
And how do I create that reality? With gratitude, with grit, being flexible, understanding, and willing to learn, because you cannot afford to say I know it all, because then it bites you on the rear end.
Absolutely. Lifelong learning, always.
Absolutely.
I know you've said that you've never had that moment where you consider yourself like at the top of your game. So I'm curious to know, how has your definition of success changed throughout the years?
Ooh, that's a deep question. My definition of success throughout the years. For lack of better words, I would say that staying humble, knowing who you are, looking at the mirror and saying, you're a cool guy, or what's going on,
Yeah.
So to me, that's how I define success. It's just like self-reflection, and I understand nobody around me is perfect, and neither am I. And sometimes, I get mad at myself for doing things that I shouldn't have done, or saying things that I shouldn't have said. But I think that applies to all of us, because none of us are perfect.
Yeah. And I feel like as long as you can reflect on those moments and then say, oh, if I should have done this differently here, I'll know that going forward. And then if you actually are able to make that change, I feel like that's all you can do. You're just a person.
So to me, the definition of success is gratitude.
I love that.
Yeah. To me, if you feel like that, you feel a lot lighter.
When you reflect on your career with DPS, what makes you most proud?
I think the fact that I have something to contribute. What it is, I don't know, because I'm not counting my blessings on a daily basis, But I think that what makes me proud is if I'm of help, if I'm able to do something for somebody, especially for students, especially for my coworkers.
Yeah.
I think that's really what makes me feel whole.
Well, I want to talk about something that I'm really proud of on your behalf.
Okay.
Your 2023-24 Emmy for the Bryant Webster Mariachi Band. How did it feel when you're able to win an Emmy specifically for highlighting Hispanic heritage at DPS?
I was in disbelief. I was like, didn't we win? Then I had a chance to attend the ceremony, and it was one of those moments where like, is this surreal? Is it like, really? I never had in my mind any, this has never been my motivation. It came with the territory, it came with an action, right? Because for every action, there is a reaction.
Yeah.
But I cannot underestimate the work behind a whole team, right? So I happen to have a title of producer, lead producer, whatever. I contributed.
Yes.
And so I'm part of it now, right? And so, yeah, that's where it's at. And then that was 2023. It's behind us now, right?
Yeah.
So I love it. I'm proud of it. Like I said, I don't overestimate it or underestimate it. But I think, it's just keeping my feet on the ground. It's a very special moment, but it's something that has already passed. The question is, what's next?
What is next? Can you answer that question for yourself?
It's just keep doing what we know how to do best, and being open-minded to learn the new things, and being humble enough to take feedback, criticism, and be honest with myself. That's been the formula that has worked, and I'm not willing to change it.
Yeah. I think if you found a lot of success and you've been able to tell the stories that should be told and spotlighted, that's an amazing thing.
Well, here's the thing, time has told me that I've been at the top, and I didn't know I was at the top because I didn't know what the top was.
Yeah.
So now I realize that was my top. That was like my prime moment, right? But then after you go up, what's next?
More up? No. Put that hand down.
You go down, right? You go up and then go down, right? And so that's life. Life runs in cycles. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. It's like the wheel of fortune, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, when you're down is when you really get those teachable moments, and then you reflect, and why am I at this level now? If I was,
Yeah.
or if I've been this, and then you go like, no, well, you got to keep working on this, and that. And knowing your strengths and your weaknesses is a good way to know,
Absolutely.
What's next.
What do you consider your strengths to be? Because I feel like I have a list of them on your behalf.
Okay. It's hard for me to say, well, I'm all this, right? But I think that if anyone stands out, is I'm open-minded. I have some sort of a creative brain.
Yeah.
A lot of these concepts that we do, and that I've done through my life come in my dreams. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, oh, what if we did this? What if we did that?
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
What do you think has been the craziest idea that you've had that's worked or not worked?
Well, the one that's worked is not realizing that when you're on radio, you're all by yourself in a room with the mixer, with some controllers and some music.
Yeah.
And you're looking at a clock, and that keeps you, on time, right? And so most people think that, well, this guy's having a blast there, because, he sounds so animated, and, hey, good morning, this is Beto Gaytan, and let's have fun, whatever.
Yeah.
You close that mic, and it's all crickets. And you're like, wow, this is wild.
Yeah.
And then you open the mic, and then that energy has to go back up. It's like, good morning, Denver, So it's, it's one of those.
Yeah. Well, I want to say that we're close to time here, but I want to end with closing advice.
Okay.
I think a lot of our students can see themselves in you, and I think they aspire to achieve the career that you've had, regardless of whether that's in broadcast, communications, whatever. But what advice, if any, would you give specifically to our DPS students?
That's a good question, and I'm going to elaborate a little bit on that. I've had a chance to, through my career, to go to schools and talk about my story with kids and all that, right? Especially when I was on air, it's like, oh, there's a popular Beto Gaytan, whatever, The kids were like, oh yeah, can you sign up?
The kids are.
Yeah, it's like that. Nowadays it's less because there's new generations coming through, and education is a lot of fun for me, but maybe sometimes it's not as appealing for the broader masses, even though it should be. And so my advice for them would be, hey, be respectful, follow your dreams, never give up, stay clean, don't do stuff that would get you in trouble, listen to your parents, because if you listen to your parents, nobody loves you more than your parents do, I know there are some parents out there that maybe don't feel the way I feel, and some kids that don't feel.
But in that situation, you're their adoptive parents.
Kind of, sort of.
You've got all the
you know?
DPS students under your wing.
So I had an interaction with some students, you know, at I think it wasn't Legacy Options. I forget the name of that school, but anyway, it was this past summer, and so I got to interact with the kids. They got to see the Emmy and everything, and they were like, "Oh yeah, how cool would that be?" And I said, "Well, this isn't about me. This is more about you. What do you want to do when you graduate?" And he was like, "Well, you know, I want to be rich, and I want to work construction, and I want to have all these employees." And I was like, "Well, do you know what it takes to get there?" And it was like, "No, well, my brother works construction, and I can just do the same thing." I said, no, you got to educate yourself, you know. You got to be financially wise. You have to learn the trade and all those things. Like, oh, you mean I can just be a construction worker and become rich and drive a nice fancy truck like a lot of my friends do? It's like, no.
There's more to it
There's
than that,
more to it than that.
unfortunately.
And so that's basically in a nutshell, you know, the things that I talked to them. And, you know, my advice wouldn't be any different now that I have this opportunity to talk with you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being our first guest on DPS Stories. It's been amazing having you here.
Thank you so much. Thanks to the entire communications team and, you know, my my team members, you know, Javier, you know, Don,
and you,
and Beto,
and Beto.
Thank you for the trust. You know,
Absolutely.
This is a big deal. You know, coming up with a concept like this, it's a big deal, and for the district to trust me. And, you know, my supervisor, Javier, to say, "Well, Beto, we're going to showcase your story." I was like, "Really? You think my story is that compelling? I don't know about that." But, you know, I ended up doing it because I'm brave, and I hope that the time that I invested in my career, you know, resonates with someone, and they take something from this conversation.
Not to speak on behalf of the audience, but I'm sure they 100% will. That's all the time we have for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to DPS Stories so you never miss an episode. We'll see you next time.